The plane was packed, the hum of engines filling the cabin, when a shocking moment shattered the uneasy calm. A pregnant woman, quietly settling into her seat, suddenly became the target of an unthinkable act. A man, consumed by anger and prejudice, kicked her without warning. Gasps echoed through the aisle, passengers frozen in disbelief, unsure how to react. The woman, holding back tears, tried to steady herself, clutching her stomach as fear and confusion spread like wildfire. No one expected what happened next. As the tension built, something fell from her Paquita badge glinting in the overhead light. It was an FBI badge. The very people who thought they understood the situation realized they were completely wrong. Suddenly, the dynamics of the plane changed. The man who had acted with such hate now faced a reality he never saw coming. This was more than just a moment of anger. It was a clash of courage, identity, and justice. Who was this woman really, and what would happen next? The passengers, still in shock, could only watch as the story unfolded, unsure whether the man's actions would lead to immediate consequences, or if something far more dramatic was about to take place mid-flight. In the next moments, secrets would be revealed, and the true strength of one woman's bravery would be tested in ways nobody on that plane could have imagined. Stay with us, because what happens next will leave you questioning assumptions, and witnessing a shocking twist that changes everything. Do you want me to also draft a second part that smoothly transitions into the climax for your video? The passengers were still whispering, eyes darting between the pregnant woman and the man who had just attacked her. Some reached for their phones, unsure if they should call for help or wait for the crew. The woman's hands trembled as she picked up her badge, her calm but firm expression hinting that she was more than just an ordinary traveler. The man, meanwhile, shifted nervously, suddenly aware that he was no longer in control. Little did anyone know, the woman had been traveling on a special assignment, one that required courage, quick thinking, and nerves of steel. She had faced dangerous situations before, but never in such a confined, unpredictable space as a commercial airplane. Every eye in the cabin seemed to hold a question. Who was she really, and what did her badge mean for what might happen next? The man tried to compose himself, muttering half-hearted apologies, but the tension only thickened. Some passengers edged closer to the scene, unsure whether to intervene or stay seated. The flight attendants whispered urgently among themselves, aware that one wrong move could escalate the situation. Meanwhile, fragments of the woman's story began to emerge. An accomplished agent, respected by colleagues, someone trained to handle crises, but also human, vulnerable, and carrying life within her. The contrast between the man's hate and her resilience created an almost tangible tension in the air. As the plane continued its flight, a sense of anticipation gripped everyone. No one knew what the next moment would bring: confrontation, revelation, or something entirely unexpected. One thing was clear: this was a flight nobody would ever forget, and the story was far from over. The tension in the cabin was palpable. Passengers shifted in their seats, stealing glances at the pregnant woman, now holding her badge with a mix of calm, authority, and quiet fury. Some whispered to their neighbors, speculating about her identity and the potential consequences for the man who had just acted out in such a hateful way. Others stared in disbelief, unsure how to process what they had just witnessed. The man who had kicked her tried to sit back, pretending he had done nothing wrong, but the weight of everyone's eyes pressed down on him. His bravado faltered as he noticed crew members subtly moving closer, hands ready but careful not to escalate the situation. He muttered under his breath, his anger mixing with fear. Every word and glance seemed to reveal how little control he had over what was unfolding. Meanwhile, the woman's mind raced, analyzing the situation like she had been trained to do hundreds of times before. She was aware of her surroundings, the potential threats, and the lives depending on her composure. Her experience as an FBI agent had taught her that situations like this rarely unfolded predictably, and in a confined space like a plane, even the smallest move could have huge consequences. Passengers began noticing small details: the way she held her badge, the precision in her movements, the calm authority in her voice when she finally spoke. Some of them started to piece together that she wasn't just defending herself. She was asserting control in a way that suggested danger, intelligence, and strategy. But just as the cabin seemed to hold its collective breath, the man's phone vibrated in his pocket, drawing a glance that made the woman's eyes flicker with recognition. A new layer of mystery had just appeared, and everyone on the plane could sense that the real story was only beginning. I can continue with the next part, where the unfolding mystery escalates into shocking action mid-flight while keeping the suspense alive. Do you want me to write that? The air on the plane had shifted completely. Conversations had died down, replaced by a tense silence as every passenger watched the interaction between the pregnant woman and the man who had kicked her. Her grip on the badge was steady, her eyes scanning the cabin with calculated focus. There was no panic in her movements, only the kind of quiet authority that made people instinctively know she could handle anything. The man's phone buzzed again, and this time, he couldn't hide the unease in his expression. He glanced around nervously, realizing that his actions had painted a target on himself. Passengers noticed his subtle twitching, whispers rising about what the woman's badge really meant. Some began to wonder if he had unknowingly stepped into a situation far bigger than his moment of hate. Flight attendants moved closer, subtly positioning themselves between the passengers. But it was clear they were just observers to something bigger that could unfold at any second. The woman shifted slightly in her seat, and a few passengers noticed her tense stance, a sign that she was preparing for what might come next. Her training and instincts were clearly kicking in, and the sense of controlled power emanating from her created an almost electric atmosphere as the plane continued its journey through the clouds. The man reached for his bag in a way that made several passengers hold their breath. At the same time, the woman's eyes narrowed, catching a glimpse of something that hinted at more than just an ordinary confrontation. Every movement, every glance, was now loaded with suspense, leaving everyone on board on edge. No one knew what would happen next. The potential for chaos, a sudden revelation, or a dramatic showdown hung thick in the air. It was clear that the flight had become more than a simple journey. It had turned into a high-stakes stage where courage, fear, and justice were about to collide in ways no one could anticipate. Just as the tension in the cabin seemed unbearable, a sudden commotion erupted near the back of the plane. A passenger had noticed something unusual. Another man, quietly seated and watching the pregnant woman with an intensity that made even the crew uneasy. He wasn't involved in the initial incident, but his behavior suggested he might be connected to something far bigger. Whispers started spreading down the aisles, passengers exchanging worried glances as they tried to piece together what was happening. The woman's eyes flicked toward him instantly, her expression tightening ever so slightly. Even with her calm demeanor, there was a spark of recognition, a hint that this was more than just a random threat. It was clear she was processing information rapidly, weighing risks, and preparing for the possibility that the situation could escalate in ways no one on board could predict. Meanwhile, the man who had kicked her shifted nervously, now aware that he might not have been the only one under scrutiny. The sudden appearance of this new figure introduced a second layer of danger, one that complicated the story and made the stakes far higher. Passengers leaned forward in their seats, some gripping armrests. As the sense of anticipation grew, the plane felt smaller, every movement magnified, every glance charged with potential consequences. The woman subtly adjusted her position, signaling to someone only she seemed to notice. A bead of sweat traced the man's temple, and he glanced toward the flight attendants, realizing that his earlier confidence was completely gone. The cabin was a pressure cooker, filled with fear, suspicion, and uncertainty, and everyone could sense that the real test of courage and the unfolding mystery was just moments away. The cabin erupted into controlled chaos in the blink of an eye. The pregnant woman stood, her posture calm but commanding, and all eyes turned to her. In a voice that carried authority without a hint of panic, she addressed the man who had kicked her. "Step away from your seat now." The man froze, his earlier bravado completely gone, replaced by the realization that he was facing someone trained, fearless, and unshakable. Passengers held their breath as the mysterious man at the back of the plane rose slowly, his intentions now clear. He reached into his bag, but before he could act, the woman moved with precision, intercepting him. A flash of her badge was all it took. Everyone understood she wasn't just an agent. She was in full control of the situation. The FBI training she had relied on for years became evident in every calculated step and measured word. The man who had attacked her was quickly restrained by nearby passengers and crew. Thigh.